Greetings, brothers and sisters. Just a few little things to get to headline-wise. Expiration date. I want to get into Trump stuff. Huge voiceover about people with dealing with people with personality disorders, hostile personalities. Some epic comments from Trumpers and Hillary Clinton supporters. I mean, this is, I don't know. A lot going to happen here today. Banks could begin canceling lines of credit soon. More than half the small business say they can't get adequate financing. The growing banking crisis has small business owners concerned their lines of credit could be canceled as elevated interest rates further diminish loans in the financial sector. You know, there's going to be a point. Let's see if there's anything here.
Do you love getting high, but smoking hurts your lungs? I've got you covered.
What? This is an ad for Fox News.
You need to try these Delta 9 gummies from Mood.
Hello, Mood.
I always get my products from Mood because they carry the highest quality, lab-tested products in the industry. And
Boom, that's where she gets her products.
They smell and taste so good. I actually have to be careful not to eat too many before the high creeps up on me. I
It's on Fox News.
know what you're thinking. Is that legal? Yes, they're 100% legal in all 50 states ever since the 2018 Farm Bill. And you can look it up yourself if you don't believe me. And if you're not super into gummies,
Oh, no, I believe you. I'll take your word for it, pot dealer. Pot dealers never lie. Neither do pot smokers and gummy eaters. Now, I have nothing to do with pot. I haven't smoked pot since I was in my early 20s. There's no reason for them to show me this ad. There's no research. I haven't had anything, close to any interest in pot or gummies or any of these things. In fact, when my channel was just about farming, I had a video entitled, me and my family plant blueberries or something, right? And it was the number one video on my channel for a very long time. And I never understood. At first, I didn't understand why. It had over 100,000 views. And the rest of my videos, had like 100, like 200, 300. I mean, and I started getting comments like, man, you're really low. Because my kids were planting blueberry bushes, actual blueberries. And people were like, you're really low, making your kids plant the blueberry because they thought it was blueberry marijuana or something like this, some kind of whatever it was. Plant the blueberry bushes so, so they take the rap. And then I kind of got caught on to the fact that this was about, they thought my video was about pot, and, that's all you need to know, right? Like, about the internet and the state of humanity.
They have hash, pre-rolls, flour, and so much more. And if you're still skeptical, you can check out thousands of reviews on their website. Go to hellomood.co or click.
Oh, no. Okay, so.
Well, we've got about 2.5 minutes to go until the end of the trading day. Major averages, unfortunately, are finishing lower. Now, we're off of our session lows, at least, for the Dow and the S&P. So a little bit of good news. But again, we've got Kenny Pocari is going to join me right now. We've got all this jobs data coming out. Kenny, final couple of minutes here. Your thoughts?
So I think tomorrow, like I said, we're going to get a taste of what the non-farm could look like on Friday. But I think, look, like anything, it is a quiet week, so you're not going to really have to make any decisions until next week.
All right, so they're not talking about this line of credit, but, jobs report just came out. It's only a matter of time before people lose faith in the economy. Exclusive 64, Madonna 64, Madam Expiration Date, was deeply affected by harsh criticism of changing face, and is determined to look more like her old self ahead of her sold-out global tour so she can ensure it's perfect for fans. She sold out her tour. Like, what kind of size venue? 80-show tour celebration this summer. I mean, it's just amazing that, she was never a good singer. Her songs haven't, there's her face now, right? The problem is, if she's talking about her old self in terms of being young, she photoshops all these And these things are all enhanced. And you hear this, she goes licking something again. I showed you her licking her guitar the other day. She's constantly licking stuff. Like that's her go-to signature move. But she's never going to look like her old self. She's never going to look young again. There she is giving you the finger. There's the face there. But they've changed the structure of her face. You can't make that go away. You can't fix that. Like she's going to get more plastic surgery. And so, I mean, you know, like it's a disaster. Right? And she's just, it's not going to happen. Doesn't work that way, Madam Expiration Date. You're not going to get younger, and you can't repair your face after plastic surgery. So this is the woman who's in charge of the European Union Bank, and she's being, you know, she's having a discussion or interview with Zelensky from the Ukraine for some reason, and this happened.
Well, I have a question about. I'm also a good user of electronic money. So my question.
Yeah, that's how the U.S. funnels my payments, and I send them back washed money, you know, like to the Biden family and Hunter and the rest of them.
You're introducing the electronic euro, as I know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how can switching to an electronic currency help?
Well, two things. Number one, it will be decided in October. So we are preparing the ground. We want to be ready. We want to be trained, but it will not be decided until October 23.
It's already decided.
The reason I'm personally convinced that we have to move ahead is a situation like the one we are in now. We are dependent on the supply of gas by a very unfriendly country. I don't want Europe to be dependent on an unfriendly country's currency. For instance, I don't know, you know, the Chinese currency, the Russian currency, the whatever.
American currency.
Or dependent on a friendly currency, but which is activated by a private corporate.
Okay, so they're getting rid of the petrodollar. I mean, this is all like, you know, this is all apocalypse type of news. So Jamie Lee Curtis, remember I talked about her Vicodin issue, right? And this is her.
I went to a friend of mine early February, and I went to a friend of mine, and we both had kids the same age, and I kind of like sidled up to her and kind of like
Choked her out.
and finally, you know, was able to say that I had a problem with Vicodin.
Boom. It's good to be honest and admit your problems.
And she looked at me and said, "Yeah, I know, me too. Isn't it amazing?" And she gave me at that moment the number of a doctor who would write you script.
So you don't really have a problem. You were finding somebody who could help you get more Vicodin.
Because prior to that, I didn't really get it from doctors. 5-finger discount.
You stole Vicodin from pharmacies? 5-finger discount, right?
Here and there. I had my ways.
She's very proud of it. She had her ways. She could always get her Vicodin.
That night, when I woke up sometime between sleep and waking, all of a sudden I went, oh, someone else is just like me.
Well, that's so nice. You had a pal. Someone is just like you. Right? So she also had a Johnson, right? Is that what you're saying?
I call myself a junkie. I refer to myself as a junkie simply so I demystify it. I call myself a dope fiend.
Yes, all things that I would agree with. Junkie, dope fiend, ghoul. I mean, they're all there, right? So she's being celebrated. They love her now. Like the Hollywood's worshiping liberal people, they love Jamie Lee Curtis now.
Because I'm a dope fiend. And I was in my kitchen and I had a pocket full of Vicodin. I had a glass of wine on the counter.
Boom, we've seen this before.
It was 5, you know, it was Vic o'clock. I mean, it was just sort of like cocktail hour. And I pocketed 5 of them, you know, put them in my mouth.
Ghoul hole.
Took a swig of wine, and from behind me, I heard this. "You know, Jamie, I see you. I see you with your little pills, and you think you're so fabulous
It's so weird.
and so great.
So this voice that you're hearing is manifestation of Vicodin. It's very, deliberate and dramatic.
The truth is, you're dead. You're a dead woman. That was a first big, shocking realization.
That you're a ghoul. It's good. It's good. It's all, it's all good in the hood, Jamie. Like I said, there's all these people that just love her. I'm getting all these comments. I have a short video of hers that's, got, I don't know, last time I checked, over 50-something thousand views. And so it's making it in front of normies, and I just get all these comments. They love her, how great she is, how horrible I am, right? And, she's been a Hollywood scum for her whole life and a drug addict and all these things. And now she's admitting to some of these, like being a Nepo baby and being a drug addict. They love her so much, right? And she's got the issue with her kid and all those things, her family life. She's just a disaster. So one of my viewers sent me this via Facebook. I want to get into Trump, but, I used to admire this, or not admire, not look up to, but I used to think this was funny about Trump. I used to enjoy this, but it's not funny anymore because he failed. Like, he epically failed. It's the, for me, it's probably the Operation Warp Speed more than anything else, but that's that whole last 6 months and everything since then. He's been just an embarrassment. Like, he was a good character in the show, but this shows you his narcissism. And if you're a Trump supporter, you can say, well, he's better than Biden or all these things, but you can't deny how selfish and narcissistic he is. So tell me Trump doesn't look like Fishboy here. And he does this all the time. This is, he makes these fish faces. He's constantly making fish faces. If he didn't want to be Fishboy, he'd stop making these fish faces. But anyways, there was a video compilation put together by the website Vice entitled Nobody But Trump. And it's impressive. They did a good job here. But they copyrighted me on it, which kind of sucks because they're taking a bunch of clips of Trump's speeches, which they don't own the copyright to. So I could fight it, but I'm not going to because you can watch it. It kind of pertains to what I'm going to say next. I'll show you the end of it. There's a long list where Trump is saying all these things. I got a couple of short videos that I'll see if those get copyrighted as well. And if not, I'll post those tomorrow. But anyways, I've taken that out of the video just because I don't have the time to deal with this right now. But here's the end of it, and then the long voiceover about sociopaths.
Nobody knows the system better than me.
Nobody knows the system better than Fishboy. This guy just gets it, right? He's all of those things. Strongest man in the world and everything else. Fishboy for the win. Okay, so yesterday on my video, this is today when I'm doing it, but yesterday for when you're listening, yesterday for you. I want to talk about negative personalities, sociopaths, deviant personalities, and, how to deal with them, what's just what makes them tick, these types of things. I haven't talked about this in a while, and I've had some recent experience with this, and there's levels of it. And so I wanted to talk about it here, why it's fresh. Before that, I want to read the comments, Hilary supporters and Trump supporter comments. They're wonderful and hilarious. And before that, I want to revisit the Jeremy Renner thing. Kinda, right? And I recently made a video about practice to do with the gratefulness meditation that we do here. Some of us do. And so I was talking about Jeremy Renner and his stupidity and how, when I rented, we rented a bulldozer and a skid steer. And when I looked at, I got into the bulldozer and you had to climb on the tracks. There's a foot peg, but you still had to get on the tracks. And the tracks are kind of long. I don't want to say they're like blades, but they're thin metal and it's not great footing. And I was working in it was wet and there's mud on them and mud on my shoes. and I was aware of the possibility of slipping when it wasn't moving. And that would be pretty bad because anywhere you would fall would be a pretty harsh and aggressive surface, right? Whether you fell into the blade or you fell on the tracks themselves. I mean, it's just all hard metal, and it would be a bummer. And the one thing I mentally, said to myself, and I, covered this in this video yesterday, but I want to restate it here, is that if for some reason the bulldozer was headed for the house or was headed, down at, whatever, some, where it'd be, doing damage to the bulldozer or something, if it was moving, and I made sure it wasn't because I turned it off every time I got out and I put the blade down, which if you do that, it's like a brake, and there's also an emergency brake, right? And so I made sure the thing wasn't going to move. But like if it, for whatever reason, did, under no circumstances would I try to, run up on the moving tracks like Jeremy Renner did and try to get into the cab. Because things happen quickly and you make split-second decisions. And I said, no matter what happens, that's something you're never going to do. That's not an option, right? You can, grab people or things and get things out of the way or whatever it is, figure out something else, but you can't, you won't survive that. Like, it's not something that would ever be successful. And so I just made the video. I completed the video for my other channel about Jeremy Renner, these other things. And I was, we were talking about this. And, it came to my mind to say this, and I think I might have said it before. But in every scenario you might face, when you used to have fire drills when you were at school, and they'd ring the fire alarm, and the teachers, everyone had their role to play, and you got out of the, the classroom. Now they do this with these, these events that happen, whatever. But, having these drills in practice is essential. Any sort of practice is essential. My family and I used to turn the electricity off for like a whole weekend. And, it was kind of cool in different ways. And, live that way and, not have electricity just as sort of a test or a drill, right? Or you could pretend there's a collapse and, just live for like, and I'm not suggesting or recommending, I'm saying these are things you could consider. And seeing, where the holes are in your survival system, right? Like you can go through different scenarios. And that's what they do in any kind of crisis management situation. It's practice, it's repetition, it's all of these things, right? That you are, you're assuring yourself that you've prepared for something. When my kids and I were in the flood in India, my kids, we had trained them for various scenarios and things. And, not any sort of militaristic kind of, in a, a slipshod way, but they had enough training that they were doing so much better than other kids. And some of my neighbors commented on it, right? They were, ready for these kind of circumstances and just being mentally ready. And like, having, you should always have like rules of engagement, like what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do. Like, I'm not going to eat people, right? Like if it comes to dying or eating people, I'm going to die, right? Like there's just going to be some things that you're not willing to do in a like post-apocalyptic or any kind of a scenario or situation, right? But having the training and being mentally prepared and having, sort of some ground rules, taking a breath and, saying, all right, this is a new situation. You might be a little bit in a state of shock or, might be a little bit rattled or, shook or a little bit, calming down because we have the meditation here, which helps with that, and just processing it and figuring out what you're going to do. It's usually good to take a breath before reacting to things, talking about what I'm going to talk about in a bit with these personality disorder folks, right? But you can prepare for anything and think about, how you can do that. How you can do a fire drill for things that are going to happen. Like how would you go if your electricity shut off or there's no food in the grocery store, all these things, There are people, the Mormons, I think they have 3 months worth of food. It's like, every one of them, they're into big, food storage and all these types of things. So, there's ways to and that gives you a good long period of time to adjust to new circumstances. And so, just some thoughts of this. But preparing for something and, training and getting, ready for it mentally and, spiritually, and being able to adjust yourself is a must for changing circumstances. With that in mind, let's go to the comments. Let me do the Hillary comments first. I want to talk a little bit more about the Trump and the Trumpers and then segue into the whole personality disorder thing. And so that's not a Hillary comment. It's a Trump comment. Here is, let me see, I think it's this one here. Let me click on it here. Oh, this is something different. So this is, why won't Fishboy just go away? Hillary's hilarious latest excuses and Fetterman something. Hi, Paul. Can you please comment on the mRNA vax being injected into cattle and pork? Well, I really can't because all I know is what my wife told me yesterday. And that is that they're doing this. And even for like grass-fed beef or some of these, these non-GMO or whatever it is, I don't know. Again, I don't know very much about it. But they're doing this to lots of different animals. I mean, we just processed our 2 cows. We had 2 cows for a while. And we have like freezers full. It's like they were really big. And we fed them well and they were, so, there's that. And I mean, it's going to get to the point where you're going to have to grow more and more of your food. It's not that hard to raise these meat chickens. I mean, they're not great. They're, these Franken chickens that are, we had a couple of them and they were like, they outgrew their feathers and their legs. They couldn't stand and it was hard to watch. They have so much muscle mass. But, for us, we have the farm, we have some acreage and, in the future for us, that's what's going to be. Or, going to, we have these Amish people who are not Amish, but they're like, they're kind, they're German, I forget what they are, but they sell raw milk and, grass-fed meat. We can ask them about the whether they're doing the vaxes or not. But I mean, they're gonna, they're trying to get you, one way or another. So like I said, I don't know much about it, but I don't really trust store-bought food, and it's just more and more eating at home. I mean, not going to restaurants where they always get, unless you go to some health food restaurant, they're always going to get the lowest quality of whatever it is. Certainly fast foods and processed foods, and so it's cheaper to eat at home, and you can pick better quality food, and the energy, the love, the positive energy that you cook with is a big factor as well. But let's get into the Hillary comments here. So I think this is Hillary claims she lost because her supporters are stupid. I said supports, so my wife told me, and I had to redo that. Hillary is right. Memes are powerful, manipulative, and courtesy, disinformation, distortion used in cyber warfare in 2016 election, subversion, and January, insert, wake up, read. So this person wrote that. So it was interesting because there was a person right before her that said this. She's telling the truth about Hillary, same video. She lost the election because of the Russians' disinformation campaign. This is fact. She's telling how it started. Ask yourself why Putin wanted Trump in the White House so bad. He needed a mole that would help him implode our democracy, and Putin knows it must come from within. Wake up. So I had 2 Hillary Clinton supporters tell me to wake up. They're using our terminology. Wake up has always been a part of the truth community. And then the woke, gets stolen by the woke people or whatever. But, I mean, they seem like, shills or this other person, she came back. So someone wrote, how many times did she go to Epstein Island mean Hillary? And this person wrote, the same person who just wrote the last comment, how many times did Trump provide pretty young Miss Teenage U.S. pageant girls to Epstein's parties? How many pics out there with Trump and Epstein laughing with arms around one another? Open your eyes, you support the devil. and his minions. But it's okay. Hillary went. Like, this is the problem for both the right and left people, because they both can, point out things about the other side. Some of them are correct. Some of them are whatever. But they're capable of doing that, but they can't look at their own belief system, right? And, these seems to be shills. I don't know. But wow. There might be some more coming in, because that video is probably it's already gotten a couple of thousand views. It's a short video. And so, just wowza. But not to be outdone, this is from the Trumpers. And there's a variety of comments here. Here's the first one. Who is the evil empire you speak of, Fishboy? And the person wrote, "You are Fishboy." And giving me the middle finger 3 times and some other emoji. I don't know what it is. And then the person wrote before that, the evil is not him, you are blinded. This classic Trumpers. Then that's the comment I just read about Hillary. But then there was this other one. The person wrote, "Never thought Paul would fall victim to TDS, Trump derangement syndrome." I haven't heard that in a while. Not a big fan of Trump, but that's all this video was. Well, it wasn't, because I covered Hillary in it. I covered Jojo Magoo in it, and I covered other subjects. But even if it was just the Trump stuff, it's not Trump derangement syndrome. Like, if you can't see that, if you don't have the capacity to see the difference, right? When I worked in the, the psychological field, you have a master's in counseling, which I'll get to in a bit when I talk about these personality disordered people, which I'll segue into with this Trump thing. But when I worked in this field, and you work with the DSM-5, you had this thing called differential diagnosis. And there were similar conditions like schizophrenia and schizotypal personality, whatever it is. And, I can't even remember these various things. Dissociative identity disorder used to be multiple personality disorder. So these things, you have to look for a difference. Some of the things have certain symptoms and don't have others, but they're similar, right? And you have to do a differential diagnosis to figure out which one's more accurate. And, I don't really believe in the psychological model. I'm not saying it's 100% wrong. It's negative, it's all these things. I'll probably talk about that as well in a little bit. But if you can't discern between what I'm saying about Trump and what the mainstream media and the Dems are saying about Trump, then you have no capacity for critical thinking. You're like clueless. Because what I'm saying about Trump isn't that the official story that they give you. What I'm saying about Trump is, like, he was always a putz. He was like not capable of getting it done, right? Like, he wasn't ever going to deliver on all these promises. But what I liked about him was he was different. He wasn't presidential, and he was funny. I liked him on The Apprentice, right? But then, he ran their agenda. He got run by them. He pushed out the vax with the Operation Warp Speed. He got totally worked on COVID all along, shut down the economy, and then got worked on the election. And then, the way he acted towards his supporters, which he turned on at the end after leading them like a Judas goat. And it was hard to watch. And Trump put an end to his character arc. And during his presidency, because he was, impotent, and he couldn't deliver on all these promises, and he can't deliver on them now because he had no real power. He's just like a puppet like all the rest. And if you think Trump is going to get elected now and he's going to have the power to pass legislation, there's no Democrat that'll ever vote for him. And there's many Republicans that are, especially when he's a lame duck president in his second term. So if he couldn't get it done the first term, there's no way he's getting anything done in the second term. And so he failed in the first term, where no matter what he brags about, he's going to fail now. And now it's just hard to watch, right? But they pushed this agenda through, and there was a bigger leap in terms of the left power grab while Trump was in office because of the hatred of Trump. And so, again, he failed on every level. And that's not what the mainstream media is saying in any way, capacity, or shape or form. And so to call what I'm doing and what they're doing the same thing is, a person with a weak mind and the inability for critical thinking skills, right? I mean, that's, it's obvious. Like, you should be able to discern that. It's not rocket science. You should be able to see this. You should be able to see the difference between these two things. And he sucks right now. Like the whole Fishboy stuff, just the way he looks, the way he talks, the way he's just failing. He's pathetic and, desperate. And, it's embarrassing, right? You just go away. Like, you can't because, he's got this, like, God complex now. He's way worse than he was. He's not funny anymore. And just, he's just doing damage every time he goes out there. I mean, again, I believe the system's going to collapse either way, which is what none of these people are saying. And so, I mean, I don't take it that seriously no matter what. Like, another 4 years of Jojo Magoo or Trump, I mean, what's worse? You might say it's Jojo Magoo, but if Trump's in office, the liberals can rally the forces and the public opinion and push through all these various things they pushed through before, but even worse than when Trump's in office. So, it ain't going to get better, and Trump has no power. Like Trump himself, let me see, I have the tweets from here. I went back and saved it. See if it's here. And he said this. This was one of his tweets. It was on December 9th, 2020, after the election. If somebody cheated in the election, which Democrats did, why wouldn't the election be immediately overturned? How can a country be run like this? That shows you he had no power, right? He had zero power. Like, that's an impotent, limp dick saying, he just couldn't do it. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the personality disorder. I didn't get to finish my voiceover yesterday, so today is the day I'll release this video the following morning. But first, I had one comment I wanted to read. It was on my phone this morning. I took a screenshot. I usually apparently hold my phone with my left hand because this is weird. I'm holding the mic with my right and my left. Anyway, person writes, that's not the real Madonna. She was replaced. Why in the world would they do that? Why in heaven's name would they replace Madonna with somebody else? Why would they do that? Madonna has been one of the worst, in terms of pushing this Hollywood morality that you see in front of you. All the stuff to do with, the gender stuff and all the stuff to do with just all the Hollywood morality. She has pushed against, decency and, all the kinds of old-fashioned stuff that for years, she was the worst. She's a catalyst. Like, how could they get a worse person than her? Her voice sounds exactly the same when she talks. It's the same person, and they don't need to replace her. Why would they replace her? Like, what are they getting out of replacing her, right? Like, it's just, again, you can have a theory. I think Madonna's been replaced. And there's all these people that are like, oh, this person's been replaced. And it's just, there was this stuff about cloning. I talked about cloning before anybody. Very few people on the internet talked about cloning when I started talking about it, like in 2014 or whatever. That, they could clone a human being because they cloned dogs and rhesus monkeys and horses. So they cloned all these other mammals. So they have the technology to clone people. So they're doing it because it's illegal, but internationally, but it's not, a real law. It's if they can do it, they'll do it. That's how science works. They don't care about laws and whatever it is. Somebody's doing it somewhere. But in terms of cloning somebody and accelerating their growth process and getting them to stop, like having let's say for Jojo Magoo, cloning him, taking some of his cells, and then accelerating his aging process so that he ages to 70, 80 or whatever he is now, and then just stops. His aging stops, and they take him out of the clone bag, the clone womb, and then he can't talk. He's an 80-year-old baby that doesn't have the ability to have a personality, and he can't he poops himself. Well, I guess that's I guess he has that in common with Jojo Magoo, but it's they don't have that kind of technology. If they did, then things are a lot worse than you would ever imagine, where they could clone somebody and replace them. And if you're saying it's just a double or whatever, I mean, there's this theory where everyone's like, oh, that's a replacement. Okay, that's possible. But it's highly unlikely that they would do that. And, I mean, these celebrities have body doubles or whatever it is. But they have no reason to clone Madonna. She's been great for them and their agenda, right? When people say, oh, that's a clone, they've replaced, all right, come on. And announcing it like it's fact. Like, that's the biggest thing I've seen in terms of problematic comments. Announcing something without thinking it through like it's fact when you have no real evidence, just that you believe it to be true. Like, it's not a fact. They replaced Madonna. Okay, well, where's your evidence? I don't know. I saw a video. Okay. Yeah. Good night, pumpkin, So I want to get into these deviant personalities. In terms of the psychological model, there are access to personality disorders. There's these 5 axes. Axis 1 is like mood disorders and depression and things. Axis 2 is personalities. And when I worked, personality disorders. And then when I worked as a clinician, therapist, and things like this, it was like everybody knew like the Axis 2 personality disorders were the worst. And there's lots of different mental diagnoses. But the access personality disorders are usually people who are intelligent, fairly high functioning, like they're out in the world, but they're just like wrecked in some, twisted way, like narcissistic personality disorder, the borderline personality disorder, which maybe is the worst. And then, you have the antisocial personality disorder, which used to be called the sociopath. And, there was just this overwhelming dread to work with people like this, right? Because they really never change. The chance of them changing is, I guess when they get older, they could change, There's some level of, it's not as bad because you just don't have as much, life energy in you. You don't have as much testosterone and, force and whatever. You sort of calm down a little bit. But still, like they still suck, right? It's not just less so. There was a professional counselor that came into my graduate class who did solution-focused therapy, which is more in line with my heartfulness belief. In solution-focused therapy, they define the problem, in the first a couple of sessions, and then they work on a solution, you and the therapist together. And this woman had, brought up in traditional counseling, there's different models of counseling and theories. My graduate program did a good job of explaining all the theories and different models of psychology, like behaviorist model and, of course, the Freudian model, which was the original model of therapy, which is, weird and twisted and, inappropriate, and almost no one uses that anymore. But she was like just tired of it being problem centered. And that's the problem with the psychological model, just like with allopathic medicine. It's about being sick. Like it's about being psychologically broken. And it's not about solving the problem. It's not about, when allopathic medicine isn't about prevention. It's about, everyone being sick and being constantly sick and using drugs that all have side effects that cause other problems, right? In terms of, just being a perpetual patient. Whereas the solution-focused therapy, you would define the problem for a little bit, for, a couple of sessions, and then you would never talk about it again. You'd work on a solution. There was a book that I read about solution-focused therapy because I realized it was aligned with the Sajmarg method of meditation that I do. That you're always looking for the solution and being positive about it, right? That's how Sajmarg is. It's positive suggestion. It's, having a goal and achieving the goal. It isn't about dwelling on, therapy is just like, people whining, just talking about their problems and, being a victim and never, solving anything. There's a lot of that in therapy and the psychological models and, saying, no, it's okay to be broken, all these things. But solution-focused therapy, the patient, the client has to come up with solutions and work the problem with the counselor. And this woman had worked in traditional therapy, and she said she was so much happier doing this solution-focused therapy, right? And she said, there was a book that I read about it because I was into it. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. everyone in my class was like, "Oh, this is great." Like the woman had a lot of, she was someone with, she was funny and she had a lot of positive energy. And after studying all the other psychological models, we all were, everyone in my class, and we were older people. It was, mostly people going back to school when they were older. Small program in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Mostly sort of liberal people. But I bought a couple of books on it, and one of the books, it gave example of a hitter, a baseball player who was having in a hitting slump, right, where he wasn't hitting the ball, and his manager said to him, "Well, what are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm watching videos of my swing to see why I'm not hitting the ball well, because you have to have a good swing, like in golf or baseball or any of these things. Like in basketball, it'd be your form, right? Your shot form, how you're shooting. If you're missing to the right or left, it means your shoulders are probably not squared or your elbows out. Like if your elbow is not like it should be tucked into the side of your body, right? All these things. Like when you play basketball, you kind of know when your shot is being short a lot. You're not bending your knees. You're not jumping enough. You're not gaining enough elevation, right? If the ball is long, then you have to consider all these different things with your form, right? And so with a baseball, it's hitting a baseball, it's your swing. He said, "I'm watching video of my swing," and his manager said, "Lately?" He goes, "Your swing lately?" He goes, "When you're in the slump?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm trying to fix my swing by watching me swing the bat, and figure out what's wrong with my swing." He goes, "Why don't you go back to when you were hitting the ball and watch your swing then?" And the guy did, and he broke out of his slump. And it's that solution-focused therapy. You don't focus on the problem. You focus on the solution. The solution was there already. He already was hitting the ball before, and he just had to go back and watch his swing and then and replicate it and remember he was when he was hitting the ball, watching himself hit the ball instead of focusing on the slump, seeing that he could do it, right? And so that's solution-focused therapy. That's a good example of it. But anyways, this woman was asked about these access to personality disorders, and she said, I hear them, I can smell them coming. She was like, I'll know it as soon as I play my voice message. I'll hear it in their message they leave me. And I only take on one or two of them at a time, and I'm going to charge them for every second of time that they are inevitably going to waste, right? Calling and, just demanding and all these things. But in terms of real life, when you have to deal with these personalities, they will triangulate. Like, for example, let's say they'll tell you your boss is saying this stuff about you. And then you'll say, "Oh, yeah, the boss sucks." And then they'll go back to your boss and say, "This is what this person said about you," right? Even though they provoked you to say negative things about the boss. And then, they'll triangulate. They won't, both people, the two other people involved won't know what this manipulative person is doing, right? And they don't, have the same sort of desires or same sort of, they're not happy. There's no sense of them ever being happy and satisfied. There's no sense of them ever being able to live a normal life and get joy out of things that other people get joy out of. And so they'll pretend to be, it's like with Trump or with Biden and all these, they all have these, either narcissistic personality disorder or some other personality disorder, where they pretend to be like everybody else, but they're not. And they pretend to, they've learned to, mimic these things. I've talked about this in my book, The Choice, right? There was, a villainous character who was, he learned to pretend to be like everybody else. It was like a mask he held out. He just watched and observed other people, even though he didn't have the same emotions and feelings. But figuring out their agenda is the hard part, because it's so twisted and it's not like what you would experience as normal human life. Their goals and agenda are always twisted, and, they get fed off of hurting other people, and they, suck energy off of other people's misery. This is beyond the psychological model. There's a demonic element to this, right? And they just, and they'll go into a place and they'll just ruin the environment with their negativity. They'll sabotage things and just the energy that they bring to the table, and It's just like, it's a person that goes on a team. You'll see this in sports. It might be a great athlete, but the person's a cancer to the team. The team does really poorly, even though the person performs well themselves. They're a cancer. They just sucked out the positive energy out of the locker room. Everyone's at odds with each other. They create disharmony. And if you're in a relationship with somebody like this, they just suck you dry. And there's no, they suck the hope out of you. And oftentimes you'll blame yourself, or you're not sure, because these people are great at making other people look like they're the ones who are producing this energy. Like, it's happening on an energetic level. Like, they just suck the life out of the room, the positivity. There's no love in them. There's no, they're disconnected from God, and they feed off of, darkness. I've experienced this recently, and there's a person who, oftentimes they won't hold powerful positions. But let's say there's like a board, or, there's a governing board, or there's people who are in charge. They'll constantly nag at those people, right? Or, they'll put seeds of, doubt or thought, or they'll just, they'll just keep on behind the scenes working the people in power. And they'll get the people in power to do their bidding in one way or another, just by breaking them down, by being, whatever way they have of doing it. But they're never the people that, take responsibility for those decisions, right? So the people who are in charge have to deal with the consequences of the decisions that they've been kind of forced or manipulated into making. And these people, work in the shadows to avoid any personal responsibility. So it seems like they don't have power, but they have a lot of it, right? They don't have the official title. They don't have the official position. And they might, like, for example, let's say there was like some sort of a communal vote, right? And they might work behind the scenes to get the vote to go one way, but personally, as a citizen, they'll vote the opposite way, even though they've manipulated the situation to go in another direction. And even calm somebody down. Let's say someone's really upset about something, right? And, this happened recently in a, personal situation. And, someone will, the person, manipulated this thing that was like completely unfair, and the person that it affected got really upset. And this evil person was the one that sort of comforted them and said, oh, it's okay, and they're the one who caused this person all kinds of suffering and misery, right? It was a catalyst. And so it happens all the time. Like, these people, you deal with them, and, then everyone kind of gets a sense of them after a while, but it's hard to expose the person. Like, the borderline personality disorder, they just don't want to be exposed, and so they usually will run after a certain time, because they know that the jig is up, so to speak, right? They know that they're they're gonna get caught, right? Like, everyone starts talking to each other, all the people are triangulating, and they realize that this person's sort of the center of evil, right? And they don't like that when they're exposed. And they'll do everything to try to convince people that's not true. And, they work good one-on-one, and, they try to force their worldview or narrative on you, or whatever it is. But the best thing to do is, like, document everything. And then, communicate with other people, and make sure everyone sees that this person's been duplicitous and manipulating and triangulating with people. And it's hard to do because all the positive energy has been sucked out. Like, the positive energy will be sucked out of you by these deviant personalities. Who, the borderline personality, it's a belief, fear of abandonment, based in the belief that deep down they're evil. And, and in many cases they're probably kind of right. They have, like, evil tendencies or whatever. And so they do everything in their power not to have that reach its resolution, the consequences for, facing themselves and seeing themselves as they, like, truly are, right? With a sense of, like a darkness that's inside of them. Trump and Biden, and Trump a little bit more so, but, Biden as well, are classic examples of the narcissistic personality disorder, which is, a lot more common. It's not as damaging in different ways because they're not as duplicitous. They like Trump bragging, like I just showed you, all these things. Trump is a classic case where is the biggest thing for Trump is that you worship him, that you tell him how great he is, right? That you don't criticize him, you don't do anything that it disparages him in any way. You don't tell him the truth when he's wrong, like you don't, you just go along with whatever he says. It's clearly the case. Anybody who questions him, he turns on and he goes ballistic on or whatever. Like that's a problem as a leader because you can't receive feedback and you can't understand there's a different point of view. I mean, there's a serious weakness there. Again, it's more out there. You can see it, and he's just braggadocious and whatever. It sucks, but it's not as bad as some of these more duplicitous type of personality disorders or whatever it is, right? And again, it's really about the condition of one's soul, because it's just a life-sucking energy. People walk in the room and just all the joy sucked out of it. They bring disorder and chaos and fear and anger and all these things, envy. I mean, it's like I think there was a movie, I didn't see it, called Demon or something like this, or Horns, maybe it was called Horns. And Daniel Radcliffe, too. I just saw, Harry Potter. I was watching a little bit of a Harry Potter movie. I'm like, these kids everyone in the movie is really bad actors. It's like a horrible franchise, right? Bad actors. Daniel Radcliffe was a horrible actor when he was first cast in the, as a kid actor, it's tough. Kid actors, being a kid actor sucks, right? But he never got better. Like, he just always just sucked as an actor. But anyways, in this movie, I think I saw a little bit of it. He started to grow horns, and everywhere he went, it created anger and chaos and negativity. And there's just people like that. And when you're in life with these people, or you're in a relationship, or you have projects to do with them, or whatever, God forbid you get married to one, right? Like it just sucks. And you just, there's no changing the person. There's no solutions. Things aren't going to get better. It's never going to work out because the person's incapable of being positive and achieving goals and, doing, whatever it might be. People with borderline personality disorders can never resolve anything. They, one of the ways that you can diagnose them is the thematic apperception test, I think it's called, the TAT. And it's just pictures, and a person is supposed to, describe what they see in the picture. Dramatic pictures, right? Black and white dramatic pictures. And a person with the borderline personality disorder can never bring resolution to the picture. They talk in very vague terms. And what they do is try to suspend resolution. That's their constant, work as a person behind the scenes. They just, like people want things to be resolved, and they just, keep the drama going. And they can so convince themselves that they're right. They just totally don't want to take responsibility for their failure. And they're great at convincing other people. This is kind of what happened, with my ex, was great at convincing other people. And, and it worked on me too, and, for some period of time. And convincing other people that either they're wrong or, somebody else is wrong or whatever it is, that they're the victim. And they believe it so much because they believe more in the deception than people believe in reality, right? It's, they so believe it. I had one class when I was in graduate school of addictions, and there was a good professor there, had good energy. He did this, I forget the model of counseling, but the term is unconditional positive regard. It's the humanist model of counseling. And that means that they would just be 100% positive and build the person up, the therapist would, which takes a lot of energy. Like, I could never do it. Like I could, do it for like a person like my wife or something like this, just be really positive or whatever. It's a good thing to learn, right? To be grateful. But that's like your personal life. But as a therapist, the person might be a horrible person, but you're trying to build them up because everyone else in their life in the world is tearing them down. And for some people, it works, right? For some people, that's exactly what they need. And this guy was like that, very positive, happy, as a teacher, a counselor. But he said that he had a couple came into him, and the guy was like just really drunk, right? Just, boop faced, right? Just sitting there, reeking of alcohol. It's like, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, right? And his wife is going, he's been sober for so long, and he's just doing such a great job. I'm so proud of him. Everything's going great. And the guy's like, he starts doubting the therapist starts doubting his reality that he can smell alcohol. She's so convincing in her delusion that her husband's sober. He goes and gets a colleague and says, hey, is this guy drunk or am I crazy? And then the guy goes, of course he is, right? Because the person was so delusional in her ability she was even convincing the counselor that her husband was sober when he could see he was drunk, right? And he was like trained to, to look through the BS or whatever it is, right? Or just, understand that he worked for an addictions. I mean, he was teaching the class on addictions. But anyways, these deviant personalities are in charge of our country. Like these people who are, grow up within, they're jealous and envious and hateful, and they don't ever have those good feelings, like wholesome feelings and natural joy. And, they can't, and they're, wealthy, but they can't enjoy the privileges that they have. And they're always looking for more power and more whatever it is. And that's what makes up the leadership. And you can be a good person who grows up. Like there was a kid who, his father, owned Johnson & Johnson. There's a documentary out there. It's called Born Rich. And, it's not the best truther thing, but it's very interesting. It's from years and years ago. And this guy is a son of the guy who was running Johnson & Johnson. And he starts questioning, the whole paradigm and all this stuff, the makeup of the wealthiest people. And his dad freaks out because his dad was a hippie for a while, and he questioned these things, and he was beaten down. His dad's like completely like falling apart, like psychologically, because he knows that this happened to him and he was traumatized by it. And this kid talks to like the niece of Warren Buffett, and Warren Buffett cuts her off. She's like a single mom, and Warren Buffett even doesn't even know what she said, and he just cuts her off, right? Like there's all these kind of interesting things that happen in the, it's kind of a truther thing. And I don't know what the kid's doing today, right? Probably whatever. But it showed you that like even if you have some tendencies in questioning the power that be, and you're born into it, they have ways of breaking you, either casting you out, banishing you, or they have ways of getting you to be as evil as they are. So it's not something where a good person, a saintly person, could survive and change things. They created a hell-like environment, right? And there's nothing you can do about it. You just it's going to suck you dry. Babaji, the second master of the Sajmark system, went to England when he was, towards the end of his life. And he was meeting with these English people, and he said, the condition here, the spiritual condition I think it was in London, is horrific. It's like, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't physically breathe. So I had to clean the atmosphere, like 5% of the atmosphere, just so I could be able to sit here and breathe. And I felt the same thing when my family and I got stuck on a layover. We were leaving India, and I had the wrong airport. We flew in to Heathrow, but we were flying out of another airport on Virgin Airlines, and I didn't know there was another airport, and I was like, it was just all this chaos and crisis, leaving the country with my daughter getting sick and all these things, right? Just brutal. So we had to stay over in London for a day, and we went to this castle, and I couldn't wait to get out of there, right? And it was just the grossness there, this spiritual condition there. And Babaji said, I cleaned 5% of it, he said, but I'm not going to do the rest. You guys have to do that, like to the practitioners of the system. And one of them said, well, you were in France, you were in Paris the other day. It's quite gross there because it's more immoral there, French people, whatever. And he goes, oh no, it's quite nice there, So it was, it wasn't what people would think, it's just spiritual condition is spiritual condition. And you can go to a place or you can be in around a lot of people, and the spiritual condition is really poor. And it's, and it's hard to meditate. It's hard to, think about God. It's hard to feel good. It's hard to feel, you're just in that environment. Until you're free of it, you're never going to be able to do anything, right? You could be in a family like that. You grow up in a family And they might not be like horrible people, they're, like abusive or whatever in terms of their behaviors. It's just being around them. And then once you're free of it, you're like, oh my God, it's like a weight lifted off your shoulders. And you were never going to be able to do anything while you were with those people. I mean, this is how it was with me and my ex. It was just, until it was the relationship was severed, I was, there was just no, getting better. I mean, there's like, you either have to expel the person or people out of the environment, or you have to, you have to remove yourself from the environment itself. And that's why being a politician, you're not going to fix anything. There's just so much evil. And it's just not the political evil. It's the, it's the lobbyists and the power behind it. And it's the place itself. These political cities do really poorly spiritually. Capital cities, of course, Washington, D.C., but these other places. It's so hard to, to meditate and to connect to God in those places. They're just filled with, chaos of, materiality and dysfunctional evil personalities and ghouls and vampires and zombies. Oh my, right? Like, it's just all those things. And, when you're, having relationships with those people, you just know it. Like, it just, and it might, it's not like a switch is necessarily thrown. You just get sucked into something. It's like being, the boiling of a frog. But like all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I have no positive energy. I feel horrible. And you can't extricate yourself out of the situation because you're drained and you're negative and you're hateful and you're feeling, what the other people are feeling. And you can't, get any positive feeling in yourself to break free from the situation. You get sucked into it. And so that's, pretty much what life right now is on planet Earth. You just got to carve yourself a little bit of, positivity in a world of like complete grossness and negativity. But anyways, that's, I guess, what I want to say here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely pouring for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.